Hi, I'm Brianna COF, and to put it bluntly, today I'm going to be talking about why fracking is bad. Hydraulic fracturing, commonly known as fracking, is a process of using pressurized liquid made up of water, sand, chemicals to break rock deep in the Earth's surface to release natural gas, petroleum, and brine. Fracking is and will continue to wreak havoc on the Earth's supply of drinking water and our atmosphere, arguably two of the most important aspects of sustaining life on Earth. Fracking contaminates aquifers, it uses astronomical amounts of water, and the excess of chemicals released from fracking contribute to climate change. Thus, fracking is not worth its environmental consequences. First, fracking contaminates aquifers. Aquifers are essentially underground pools of fresh water. They are incredibly important to life on Earth because that's where 30% of our fresh water is stored. The California State Water Resource Board found that at least 9 of the 11 fracking wastewater injection sites had contaminated aquifers with chemicals such as arsenic and thallium, which is an ingredient used in rat poison. 3 billion gallons of fracking wastewater were illegally injected into the Central California aquifers by the fracking industry, and this was confirmed by the EPA. Fissures created by the fracking process, because it's like you're putting so much pressurized water, there are bound to be like different cracks that are unforeseen. They create underground pathways for gases, chemicals, and radioactive materials to leak into underground aquifers, making them unusable. By allowing fracking to continue, we're wasting a resource we rely so heavily upon. Secondly, fracking uses astronomical amounts of water to break through the rock surfaces. To make matters worse, fracking is a water-intensive process using as much as 140,000 to 150,000 gallons of water per frac job daily. This permanently removes the water from the water cycle, so once it's used for fracking, we will never get it back. Due to the water crisis California is currently facing, aquifers such as the Central Valley Aquifer are already being depleted at rapid rates. We are currently in a drought due to snowpack, and we are just using up our fresh water like nobody's business. Fracking is essentially wasting one of our most necessary and precious resources in order to obtain unsustainable materials. Finally, the excess of chemicals released from fracking contribute to climate change. Research shows that there is a 9 to 10% leakage rate of methane gas into the atmosphere when fracking occurs. Methane gas has a GWP, which is a global warming potential, of 20, which means it is 20 times stronger than CO2 as an agent of climate change. We already have large amounts of methane in our atmosphere due to the cattle industry and the automobile industry. With climate change comes an onslaught of other problems, such as the melting of the polar ice caps and ecosystem destruction, just to name a few. And not enough research was done on how quickly our resources could be contaminated. Thus, issues are starting to surface that were unforeseen. Supporters of fracking claim that by doing so, the United States will decrease its dependence on foreign sources of petroleum and natural gases, but at what cost? The benefits of fracking are grossly outweighed by the risks. Fracking has severe negative impacts on the environment, ones that we cannot afford to allow to be continued. Fracking is not a foolproof process, and unless research has been done to improve the negative impacts, it needs to be stopped.
Don't worry about being blunt. Saying fracking is bad. At least we know what your position is very clearly. I do think that you want to phrase the proposition a little bit differently, and you've got a kind of an argument down there after you give us background on this that says it's not worth the environmental costs. So basically, I think your real claim is that fracking has substantial negative environmental costs. And if you're going to do a comparative argument, though, you're going to have to tell us what the comparison is. And we never really get to that except that you make a vague reference at the end that says, well, advocates of fracking, the industry that uses it, claims it's going to lead to independence, but at what cost? Well, that's a question. That's not an answer. If the cost is that we have substantially greater energy supplies, which leads to greater employment, longer longevity as a consequence, greater degrees of domestic wealth. That's a pretty good thing. But you say, well, we measured against the cost. Well, how much is fracking going to destroy the environment? How big a problem is it? That, I think, is one of the things that's missing from the general part of your argument. You've got some good information about potential problems with fracking. I thought especially the water use issue seems to be problematic, especially in California, although I'm not exactly sure what the total water use is. I got 150,000 gallons or so per day per job. That's pretty substantial. But I don't know what the total percentage of that is on California's water usage, so it's a little bit hard to measure how significant an impact that is. It's like, my saying, well, you use 30 gallons to take a shower and with your family, or take showers on a daily basis, and I use 20 gallons for our family, so you are less efficient. Well, that probably is true. There's a 10-gallon difference, but does that 10 gallons matter in the long run? If that represents a microscopic part of the water that we're using, I'm not exactly sure that your 10-gallon difference is all that important. On the other hand, if you can show, for instance, that the fracking, let's say there are hundreds of these sites, here's the total water usage each day, and in comparison to the total water usage of the state, it represents 5% of the water usage, then I think it's a little bit more measurable and we can make a stronger inference on that. The data on the aquifers being destroyed, the one piece of data that you had was that there was contamination, but it was by illegal injection of the water into the system. So it sounds like there are some regulations on this, and the only harms that you correlate to this are based on people who have violated the legal standards. What I think you need is some more information that shows that the aquifers themselves are subject to contamination as a consequence of legal fracking. You've got a general statement that says it opens pathways that could potentially do this. And I don't know where that information came from. It sounds like a piece of opinion evidence, maybe from some authority, but it's definitely an assertion at this point, and I need to have some reason to believe that that is true. Based on the way fracking works, it seems like it would be a little bit problematic since the aquifers are at different levels than the oil is. So why is it necessary that we're going to get this particular contamination? I think there needs to be a little bit more explanation. Let's see. And as a consequence, probably you needed some authorities to cite a little bit more consistently. We get off on global warming issues that are all basically asserted in this particular point. How much fracking contributes to global warming is never explained. How much global warming is going on is never explained. There's 9 to 10% of methane release. You do make a comparison of methane in the atmosphere as being substantially greater impact on the greenhouse gases than CO2. I thought that was a good piece of information that you're talking about. And again, we need a little bit more citation on that. I think your presentation of the argument is really effective. You do a good job speaking to us. You sound smooth and effective. I just think your generalizations need a little bit better evidence on those points. All right, thank you.